The scent of fire-grilled fish drifted over the porch as Cain Voss set a plate in front of his youngest daughter. The wooden cabin sat on the edge of a crystalline lake, surrounded by pines that stretched like sentinels to the stars. No one would guess that the man calmly pouring lemonade had once been labeled Asset Theta 9, the most effective and feared alien killer in the Terran Spec Ops archives. "Can we swim after dinner?" asked Layla, her braids bouncing as she wriggled in her seat. Cain smiled faintly. "Only if you beat me in cleanup." The twins, Adam and Milo, groaned in unison. They were 9, full of questions, mischief, and the casual invincibility only children possess. Cain, however, was never more alert than when they were laughing. Years of bloodshed had taught him that peace was not a right, it was a loan. And sooner or later, someone always came to collect. Tonight, the air was too still. He noticed at first when the night birds stopped calling. Then came the hum, low, almost imperceptible, like a storm building behind the stars. Cain stood slowly, eyes scanning the tree-line beyond the lake. His posture changed subtly. His shoulders squared, his hands relaxed at his sides, and his pupils dilated to full hunter's focus. "What's wrong, Daddy?" Adam asked. Cain didn't answer. He heard the drop pods before he saw them. 6 of them, descending like falling daggers. No visible insignia. No warning. "Inside." Now he ordered. The kids obeyed without question. Cain followed, grabbing a black case from beneath the floorboards. He was halfway through inputting the DNA-coded lock when a flash blinded the windows. A sonic pulse shattered the cabin walls, hurling him against the back beam. His ears rang. The room spun. He staggered his feet, vision swimming. The children gone. In the wreckage, a sphere hovered. It shimmered with a cruel silver glow and began to project a hologram. A towering figure in ornate alien regalia appeared. Eyes like black suns stared from beneath a crown of bone. Human designation, Cain Voss. Your offspring are now in custody of the Sovereign Evaluation Corps. They exhibit high cognitive variance and are selected for royal assimilation trials. You may submit formal petition via Galactic Judiciary within 60 cycles. Glory to the Sovereign. This message will self-terminate. The projection faded. The sphere did not explode. Cain stared at the empty space where his children had been. Then he screamed. The sound wasn't rage. It wasn't despair. It was the sound of a predator reawakening. It took him 2 hours to recover the children's biosignature trails. The Sovereign had used advanced phase dampeners, but their ship still left a quantum residue. He retrieved a sliver of Milo's torn shirt, just enough organic material to track through the suit's neural sync interface. The hatch to the basement opened with a hiss. No one had seen it in years. Steel and darkness greeted him. Cain descended into a tomb built for one purpose: war. Racks of suppressed weaponry lined the walls. Armor that had never seen a public schematic hung beside drones, hacking tools, and translocator mines. At the center, resting on a pedestal of obsidian, was Wraith, a living combat suit of human-alien hybrid design, banned by 12 planetary governments. It had once made him a ghost among stars. Cain ran his hand over its surface. It recognized him. "Welcome back, Commander," the suit whispered as it opened and slid around his body like black smoke. He flexed his hands. Synaptic implants responded in real time. His thoughts were weapons again. Data fed into his visor. Sovereign trajectory, capital coordinates, genetic encryption keys. It had taken the Galactic King 12 years to forget Cain Voss existed. It would take Cain 3 days to remind him why that was a mistake. He emerged from the ruins of his home before dawn. Smoke still curled into the sky, but his heart had gone cold. No grief. No fear, only mission. The first ship he needed was cloaked in a deep valley nearby, hidden for years under layers of camouflage and magnetic displacement fields. He accessed it silently. The AI inside was dormant, but not obsolete. "Query," it asked as it powered up. "Plot fastest route to the Sovereign Core. Prepare all weapon systems. Encrypt a message to Earth Command. Civilian casualties confirmed. Operation Solo. Target, Galactic King." Message recorded. "Are you requesting support?" "No," Cain said. "Just a kill count." The engines ignited with a violent thrum. His children had always asked him stories about monsters. He had told them the galaxy was full of them, but they didn't need to be afraid because their father used to hunt monsters for a living. Now, he would teach the monsters to fear him again. Kane didn't look back as the ship lifted into the sky. He was already visualizing the first strike, how to disable the King's forward relay stations, where to cut the communication relays, how to draw out the elite guards who fancied themselves untouchable. The Galactic King had no idea the scale of what he had done. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was a reckoning. And Kane Voss didn't lose family. Not twice. Not ever. The shuttle dropped from hyperspace into the orbit of a derelict mining moon. Its engines whisper silent under Kane's command. Dim stars reflected off the obsidian hull of his stolen Dominion craft. He stood at the edge of the command deck, wrapped in silence, studying the wreckage ahead, a graveyard of shattered vessels and cold steel bones. Once, this had been a thriving smuggler's hub. Now, it was the only place left where people didn't ask questions. Kane needed one thing here: information. Below, in the catacombs carved into the rock, he walked through a ring of black market brokers and pirates who sensed something wrong but couldn't name it. His armor retracted just enough to show his face, cold, scarred, and radiating lethal promise. The crowd parted without words. He approached a vendor hunched beneath glowing xenonite crystals. "I'm looking for something rare," Kane said, voice steady. The vendor, a six-eyed Narthaxian, blinked rapidly. "You have the credits?" Kane drew a data spike and slid it across the surface. Full sequence. Untraceable. The alien inspected the spike, but his tremor gave him away. Kane noticed the subtle twitch of fingers under the table, the slight delay in his breath. "You called someone?" Kane said flatly. "No." A flash of steel and blood followed. Kane broke the alien's wrist, slammed his head into the crystal slab, and pulled the encrypted communicator from his robe. He intercepted the signal before it reached its recipient. The name flashed: Karn Vectal, Dominion Bounty Lord. Kane transmitted a ghost ping through the channel, allowing the signal to be traced back. A location lit up the holographic map: Drask Forge, a fortified armory world deep in sovereign territory. He dropped the device and walked away before the crowd could react. Behind him, no one moved. No one dared. Back on the ship, Kane interfaced with Wraith. The AI analyzed the coordinates. Drask Forge is under Dominion lockdown. Entry without clearance codes is fatal. Kane locked in the coordinates anyway. "I said plot a course. I didn't ask for a suggestion." Wraith complied. As the ship accelerated into slipspace, Kane opened a sealed compartment beneath the pilot's seat. Inside lay a steel cylinder containing 3 data cubes, each encoded with a neural imprint of one of his children. Emergency backups taken during medical scans back on Earth. Insurance against memory loss, manipulation, or cloning. He watched their laughing faces flicker in holographic loops. It centered him. He wasn't just going to get them back. He was going to make sure the galaxy never dared take another human child again. The ship breached the Forge's outer gravity shell 5 hours later. The planet burned red with furnace light and volcanic activity. Massive foundries floated above molten rivers, guarded by spire-mounted ion cannons and patrol drones. Kane didn't attempt stealth. He went straight in. The moment his ship broke atmosphere, alarms flared. Unauthorized vessel detected. Identify or be destroyed. Kane responded with a missile. The blast punched through the closest cannon tower. Shrapnel rained across the Forge platform, but he was already diving, his ship twisting through industrial debris with surgical precision. He landed hard on a moving cargo track, crushed 2 security drones on impact, and emerged through the hull with his rifle in hand. He moved like a storm through the facility, efficient, brutal, unstoppable. Guards screamed and fell, some never seeing the shot that killed them. Kane didn't waste breath or bullets. Every step he took carved a path through Dominion arrogance. Inside the data control center, he cornered the Overseer, a cybernetically enhanced Torvac. The creature lunged, blades sprouting from its arms. Kane sidestepped, disabled its legs with 3 precise shots, and pinned it to the wall with a monomolecular blade. You know who I am? Kane said. The Torvak's eye implants whirred as it scanned his face. You're the Wraith. Kane didn't blink. Where is the king keeping the children? They're not on this planet. The Torvak choked. He took them to Zeroth Prime. Genetic evaluation. Brain mapping. They say he's never seen human offspring like this. He's curious. Intrigued. Kane pressed the blade deeper. Coordinates. The Torvak transmitted the data. Kane pulled the blade free. The Overseer fell to the floor, alive but maimed. Kane let him crawl through his own blood. The message had to spread. Fear was faster than any transmission. Back aboard his ship, Kane connected to the Galactic Relay System. The AI warned against it. Interstellar broadcasts could be traced, but he did it anyway. He opened a channel used by Dominion mercenary networks and fed them live footage from his helmet cam. The carnage at the forge, the crushed stronghold, the image of the Galactic King's seal splattered with blood. He added no message, just his face. The reaction was immediate. Mercenary chatter exploded across systems. Panic began to spread among the sovereign's vassals. Commanders whispered legends about the human ghost. Admirals rerouted fleets. Even bounty hunters deactivated their trackers, unwilling to engage. Kane sat back and watched the map change. Sovereign defense lines shifted. Patrols collapsed inward. They were afraid. Wraith's voice broke the silence. By attacking Drask Forge, you have initiated total war protocols. There is no diplomatic recovery from this. I'm not here for diplomacy, Kane replied. I'm here for blood. The coordinates of Zeroth Prime burned brightly on his display. Kane entered the NAV chamber and suited up for low-orbit insertion. The drop would be steep, direct atmospheric entry through a hole in the orbital security net. Only a suicidal assassin would try it. That suited him fine. Before the ship dropped into hyperspace, he accessed the last video logs stored in the royal databanks from Drask. A sovereign captain knelt before a hologram of the king. He's coming, the captain said. He breached the forge. We lost everything. The king's voice replied coldly. It's one man. The captain hesitated. He used to be more than that. A pause. Deploy the silence. Kane's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. They remembered after all. He turned off the display and leaned back, eyes closed. He saw his daughter smile, his son's laughter. It was the only thing that could pierce the armor he'd worn for years. Now they were somewhere in the depths of a monstrous capital. Unseen, unharmed for now. He would tear that city apart to get them back. He whispered to himself. The words meant only for the cold vacuum outside. They're not ready for me. Zeroth Prime rose like a crown of obsidian and glass, suspended above a swirling gas giant whose storms had raged since the dawn of recorded time. The capital of the galactic sovereign glimmered with calculated beauty, towers shaped like spires of bone and light, orbiting arrays that whispered across subspace, and a planetary shield web that pulsed with godlike precision. To most beings in the galaxy, it was unbreachable. To Kane Voss, it was just another wall that needed to be broken. He fell through the atmosphere like a spear. The drop pod tore through defense layers massed as aurora fields. Fire licked the exterior, but the Wraith suit compensated for the pressure. Inside, Kane's eyes remained calm, tracking signal intercepts, guard positions, and shield fluctuations in real time. The city below began to unfold. Perfect symmetry marred only by the invisible rod of the kingdom that thought itself invincible. As the pod broke through the lower shield shell, alarms lit the skies. Kane ejected mid-descent. His black armor caught the wind like wings as he dove between towers. He landed on the side of a spire, magnetic boots gripping instantly. Without hesitation, he moved, silent, deliberate, death in motion. The Sovereign's elite security force, the White Blades, were already scrambling to intercept. They deployed drones, spread sniper teams across rooftops, and activated bioscanners across the sector. It didn't help. Kane disabled the first squad before they realized he was near. A quick flicker through shadows, a suppressed shot to the skull, a thrown blade across 50 meters that left no time for screams. His movements were so clean they left only questions in their wake. He reached the inner district within 40 minutes. The palace of the Galactic King towered at the heart of the city, an impossible structure of crystalline stone and pulsating organic tech, guarded by thick walls of psionic force. Kane stood across a chasm from it, watching the path converge to a single heavily fortified entry point. Wraith calculated the odds of frontal assault at 0.4% success. Kane didn't argue. He reached into his suit's compartment and drew out a shard, a memory spike taken from a Sovereign Commandant back on Drass Forge. He slid it into his helmet's neural jack. The world around him blurred, then solidified. Blueprints, security cycles, guard rotations, hidden maintenance ducts. He chose a vertical shaft near the Citadel's ventilation core. It was 2 meters wide, pitch black, and housed rotating fan blades the size of transport vehicles. Kane didn't hesitate. He moved through it with timed precision, using the suit's internal gyros to guide every motion. One mistake meant dismemberment. He didn't make mistakes. Halfway through, an alert triggered. The fan slowed. Lights inside the shaft blinked to life. Kane exhaled slowly. They knew. He had minutes. He exited the shaft into a cavernous chamber, a throne hall wrapped in translucent bioveils. Dozens of statues lined the sides, each one a depiction of conquered species. He walked between them like a ghost rising from legend. At the far end, the throne sat atop a dais of living stone. Upon it lounged the Galactic King. He was massive, 7 feet tall, draped in a cloak made of living silk that shimmered with neural pulses. His face was humanoid but stretched, regal in a way that seemed sculpted rather than born. Around him stood 6 personal guards, and behind them, in containment fields, were the 3 children, Kane's children, suspended in stasis. The moment Kane stepped into the room, every weapon turned toward him. He spoke, and his voice carried across the hall like a cold wind. You have something that belongs to me. The king stood unimpressed. You are but one man. I've been called worse. You slaughtered my worlds, my generals, my forges. I only started. The king gestured. His guards moved in. Kane activated Wraith's combat mode. Time slowed. The first 2 guards fell to kinetic knives buried in their throats. The next crumpled beneath a shockwave pulse that shattered his armor. Kane moved between the rest like smoke turned solid, parrying plasma strikes with his forearm blade, disabling muscle groups with pinpoint strikes, disarming, destroying. Only the king remained. He stepped down from the throne, shedding his cloak. Underneath was not a fragile monarch, but a creature enhanced by layers of psionic implants, muscle-binding exotissue, and shimmering graviton plates. He struck first, a blow that cracked the marble floor. Kane blocked it with a grunt, boots skidding, absorbing the kinetic energy with Wraith's dampeners. They fought like forces of nature colliding, one refined through centuries of genetic supremacy, the other forged in 1,000 missions of death. Each strike was meant to kill, every movement calculated to exploit weakness. But Kane had one advantage the king did not: purpose. The king pressed his palm to the floor, summoning a spear of pure energy. Kane countered by ripping a plasma conduit from the wall and turning it into a searing blade. Their weapons clashed, sending arcs of energy screaming across the room. The stasis pods trembled. Kane saw his children behind the king, eyes closed, unmoving. The distraction cost him. The king drove the spear through Kane's side. Blood sprayed. Kane stumbled, pain flaring. The king smiled. You're immortal after all. Kane didn't answer. Instead, he stepped into the wound, closing the distance, letting the pain fuel him. He seized the spear's shaft, twisted, and used the embedded weapon to lever the king's guard down. With his free hand, he drove a dagger upward, through armor, through bone, into the king's throat. The creature choked on its arrogance. Kane yanked the blade free and let the body drop. He turned to the stasis pods. A quick scan revealed biosigns, low but steady. He cracked the seal on Layla's pod first. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, scared. Then they locked on his face. Daddy. He caught her as she fell forward. I've got you, he whispered. I've always got you. One by one, he revived the others. Adam sobbed into his shoulder. Milo clung to his leg. They didn't understand what had happened. They didn't need to. Cain gathered them in his arms, eyes darting to the approaching signal flares on the edge of his hut. Dozens of forces converging. Reinforcements. Drones. Security mechs. No way out through the same path. But Cain had planned for that. He activated a signal beacon hidden beneath his collarbone. A pulse traveled through space, back to the orbiting wreckage of the ship he arrived in. Its core overloaded. The explosion disrupted the city's shield grid for 30 seconds. He grabbed his children, activated the emergency jump device on his wrist, and whispered one last command. Home! The world blinked white. The stars bent and snapped as the emergency jump drive executed its desperate calculation. Cain held his children tight, each heartbeat thundering through his armor as the fabric of space wrapped them in a collapsing corridor of energy. The device wasn't built for four. It was an unstable prototype Cain had rebuilt from scraps, barely calibrated and never tested. He'd risked everything on a gut instinct, that getting out alive mattered more than surviving intact. The jump terminated violently. They tumbled onto cracked stone in an abandoned terraforming station on a forgotten moon orbiting Eros 9. Cain's HUD blinked with static. Gravity was thin, air barely breathable. But they were alive. Layla coughed, eyes wide and tearful. Milo whimpered, clutching Cain's arm. Adam stared at the sky, confused, his mind catching up with trauma too large to explain. Cain scanned them. No critical injuries, only exhaustion and shock. That was more than he'd dared hope for. He pulled off his helmet, took one long breath of sour air, and gathered them into his arms. It's over, he said, though the words rang hollow in his chest. He stood slowly and led them toward the station's interior. The facility had once been used to grow synthetic algae during early colonization efforts, long before Eros 9 was deemed unprofitable. Now it was dark and forgotten, perfect for disappearing. Cain sealed the doors behind them, activated backup power, and began assessing the systems. One solar panel still functioned. He rerouted it to light and warmth. A rusted med bay flickered to life. He gave the children nutrient packs, cleaned their scrapes, and helped them into sleeping pallets. They didn't ask questions. Not yet. They only wanted him nearby. He sat by the door, rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the night. He had killed the king. That much was certain. And with the king's death, the sovereign's command structure would splinter. But empires don't die quietly. Someone would rise in the power vacuum. Perhaps worse. Perhaps smarter. But they would know one truth now. Earth was not prey. And Cain Voss was not legend. He was a warning. Days passed. The children recovered slowly. They didn't cry often. Trauma had made them quiet, contemplative. Layla asked first, "Are you going to go away again?" Cain shook his head. "Never. Why did they take us?" He looked at her and saw his wife's eyes in her face. The same unblinking calm, the same quiet fire. "Because they thought they could," he said. "Because they thought you were weak. The humans are toys to break." She nodded slowly. They were wrong. They always are. Milo wanted to know what happened to the monsters. Adam wanted to know if their mother would have been proud. Cain didn't answer the first. He answered the second without hesitation. She would have smiled the whole time you punched that alien in the eye. Adam smirked. The kids needed more than food and sleep. They needed the idea of safety. So Cain began converting the station into something closer to a home. He fortified the entry points, scrubbed the AI cores, and reprogrammed the security drones. He hunted in the jagged wastes, bringing back meat from scaled rodents and skyfish that flitted between gravity breaks. Slowly, the laughter returned, but the nightmares never left him. Each night, Cain saw the king's face before it split open. He saw blood painting the marble floor. He saw the flash of the stasis pods. And always, he saw the flicker of something deeper. Not just hatred, curiosity. The king had said they were being studied. Not harmed, not even tortured, just examined. That gnawed Cain. Why them? The kids were smart, but lots of human children were. They were strong, but nothing out of the ordinary. What had the king seen that Cain hadn't? He accessed the encrypted files he'd stolen during his escape. Inside were layers of genetic scans, cognitive profiles, and neural map overlays. As he decrypted them piece by piece, his breath slowed. The children didn't just carry Cain's blood. They carried fragments of dormant sequences, ancient strand from a classified program long buried by Earth Command. The same strands that had been inserted into Cain during the Wraith trials. Experimental genome threads, thought to be inert, designed to trigger only under extreme psychological stress. The Sovereign had discovered it through the children. Cain leaned back, eyes closed. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It never had been. It had been a test. The Sovereign had baited him, studied him, and, through his children, confirmed something Earth had kept buried, that humanity was evolving into something else, something they couldn't predict or control. He looked over at Layla, Milo, and Adam. They were laughing, using broken drone parts to build a game of some kind. They were children again, but not the same. Cain understood now. The king hadn't kidnapped them for leverage. He'd done it out of fear because he saw what was coming. A new kind of human. Cain turned to the terminal and sent a pulse beacon out through the subspace relays. Coded, anonymous, untraceable. It carried only 5 words. They were right to fear. He powered down the system and walked back to the kids. Layla reached up and took his hand without looking. "You're thinking again," she said. "I always am." "Stop. You're here." He nodded, sat beside them, watched the sparks dance above the fire pit they'd made from twisted hull, plating, and fusion coils. He'd spent years thinking he was a weapon created for war. But maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe he was just the first line of defense. Behind him was the blood and ruin of an empire. Before him was the future, unpredictable, dangerous, and wonderfully human. Cain Voss smiled, not because the war was over, but because he knew one day, when it started again, the galaxy would remember what happened when someone took his children. And next time, humanity wouldn't just send one man. They'd send the ones he raised.